Nothing unusual to see here.
This one's a little bit of an unusual one. We are talking Gods of Frogs. And I guess you would call this an anthology movie, although arguably it's not in a way as well. It has multiple directors and writers and takes place over 4 time periods, starting in the 1960s and ending in 2044. So there's 4 stories that kind of are told chronologically. So it's a little bit like an anthology where you have 4 interconnected stories, but they are all also kind of expanding on the last one, and there is actually a crossover character that's actually in all 4. So, how to kind of tackle this review in regards to trying to give you a synopsis? So, broadly speaking, I suppose it's dealing with frogmen, and I'm not talking about the scuba diving type. The first movie taking place in the 1960s is about this kind of hippie cult that is seemingly worshipping this kind of frog creature. And it's a horny frog creature because it wants to mate with a human woman. And this woman gets effectively impregnated and then killed by this frogman, and it's kind of worshippers. And this is where we have our main sort of character, Eve, who's a little girl at this point. So this one is kind of like it's filmed in a sort of hazy sort of cinematography. It's tried to kind of recreate a sort of somewhat kind of vintage look, I suppose. There's not much in regards to story. It's kind of just like some weird hippie cult, slightly kind of trippy atmosphere. But it's a human woman basically getting raped by a monster, and we've seen that sort of things before. Everything from humanoids to the deep to name just one. But it's kind of, again, it's incorporating that kind of that crazed cult thing. So it's I don't think this one's anything particularly new. I think the creature effect of this kind of frog creature looks pretty interesting. It looks a little bit like a Demogorgon from Stranger Things. So it's all right. It's a relatively simple one. I quite like the kind of the sort of they attempted to kind of make it look a little bit more retro. Acting was all fine. It's but it's not a particularly memorable story. The second one is, I would say, the one which is probably the most sort of standard in regards to, if you could call it a horror movie. This one feels the most like a kind of like a slasher movie, where we have the little girl from the first movie is now like a young adult, and she's with a group of friends in the 90s, and they're out trying to kind of film like a documentary or something, and they come afoul of this kind of frogman, and it's also a horny frogman, and it plays very much like kids getting lost in the woods, attacked by a creature, weird locals, that sort of thing. It's, again, I think the practical VFX look fairly decent in this one. The creature looks, it's in the kind of the dark, so it's kind of hidden a lot of it, but you kind of see enough where I think it looks, it's a guy in a suit, but it's done in a way where I feel the creature looks pretty good. It's quite a fun one. It's probably the most, as I say, typical in regards to what you'd expect from a sort of creature feature style movie. Nothing too complicated again. I guess our characters are a little bit kind of stereotypical, annoying young people, kind of teens and stuff like that. And we have the local hick acting like a kind of redneck, as you probably expect. So again, it's a little bit kind of broad in regards to having these kind of stereotypes and sort of characters. And again, it's in a way somewhat similar to the first one, because we have a horny frogman wanting to mate with humans, and this time we get the thing where it's sort of you know, we learn that it has this kind of toxin that sort of gives like hallucinogenic effects and stuff. The third one is where it starts to kind of go a little bit weird. So now we are, I think this is 2019, and you feel like you've missed some stuff. You feel like this particular segment, it almost like it's expecting you to kind of fill in some of the blanks in regards to what's happening, because now we have this sort of father and son, and the father is some type of corporate guy, and they have a helicopter crash, and it's some type of natural disaster that's happened, and there's loads of people that are died, and they're trapped in like this kind of swampland, and the father is kind of infected by this kind of water, which is presumably our frog people are living in, and he's sort of turning into like a kind of frog-like creature, I guess. Again, this one, I don't know, if you feel like you've missed some stuff here. But I did like this one's kind of like set up in regards to some of the kind of the location and the set decoration. It almost feels a little bit sort of post-apocalyptic. You know, I think this to me was the kind of the strongest in regards to the acting. But it's a little vague about what's kind of going on here, and it's like these frog people are clearly sort of some type of resource that the corporations kind of want to exploit, or at least that's kind of what I got from it. And then the last one takes place in the future in 2044. This one by far and away looks the cheapest. It really shows the low budget in this one compared to the other three, where I think you can kind of get away with accepting the kind of the man in the suit, the frog creature. Here we still see the same man in the suit, but it's sort of lit in like interior lights and stuff, and it looks like a rubber suit, to be honest with you. And also the set sort of decoration here just looks incredibly cheap. And also everyone here is massively overacting. And it's basically like this kind of, we've got like a factory which is trying to kind of maybe farm sort of these frog creatures, and they've got them sedated and stuff like this, and they kind of run amok at the end. Again, we feel in this one, you've just kind of lost some of the information, we're just kind of supposed to piece together. And I suppose the theme here is like the exploitation of natural resources and stuff, but you feel the message is kind of lost because you feel like the movie's kind of skipped ahead, and you've some of the characters that are sort of in between, like we've got a character in this one and the third one, and they just seem like different characters. They seem completely different characters. And then we have the character of Eve, who is in all sort of four of these. Again, her character seems different in every one, and I guess she's got older in every kind of installment, but she doesn't seem like the same character in any of the kind of like the four sequences. So to me, this movie was really messy. I thought the narrative was confused and muddled. I thought the performances were inconsistent. Some were good, some weren't, and some were kind of like massively over the top. Even the same actors who play like a character in like one section, I think, are fairly strong, and then like another section, it's quite poor. The level of production value again varies. For example, the fourth one looks incredibly cheap in every kind of aspect, and to me really doesn't work, and compared to say the other three. So I found this movie like a real inconsistent mess, if I'm honest. It has some interesting ideas, and I think the narrative of having these kind of consecutive like time period jumps is an idea, and having like this sort of through line, it's an interesting one. So some of the concepts I felt are pretty strong, and it's obviously trying to have some themes about, you know, exploiting natural resources and all the rest of it. But I think the end result is a muddled movie with mixed results on practically everything. So, to be honest with you, I have to say this movie was... Do you know what? I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. And I feel I'm being a little generous with that, if I'm honest. But I think there's some interesting ideas. I just think the execution is poor. But there are elements that work within it. I think if you just want a little bit of maybe a somewhat bizarre, but original to some degree, creature feature, maybe you want to check it out. Certainly, you could argue it's somewhat original, but maybe a little bit ill thought out. So there you go. 5 out of 10. What were your thoughts if you've seen it? I look forward to seeing you next time.